Hey guys, it's Snailbiter, and I've got another Battlefield 3 video here for you guys. And this gameplay is one that I talked about a couple of videos ago. It's a Strike at Karkand Team Deathmatch, and I think it's probably one of the better rounds that I've played. And just in terms of gameplay, I was really happy with the way I was playing in this round. I thought my aim was really on target, and I know I was playing pretty smart over the course of this round. And so my final score, I think, is 69-13 or something like that. And unfortunately, the round lasted close to 20 minutes, so I obviously couldn't fit all that gameplay into this video. So I did cut some stuff, and my hard drive ran out of space towards the end of this round, so I wasn't really able to record the last minute or so, anyways. So most of what you're going to be seeing is from the beginning of this round, because that's when I was playing the best, and I go on some nice kill streaks at the beginning of the round. And I'm using the exact same setup that I talked about in the video that I posted a few days ago about my new favorite class setup. It's the M416 with the reflex red dot sight, undersling rail, and heavy barrel. And as I mentioned in that last video, I had played a couple rounds in a row with this setup, and I think in this round in particular, I had really started to play really well, and I felt comfortable with the setup as I talked about. And so you'll definitely see that translate into the gameplay that I get and then the score that I end up getting. And so what I wanted to talk about in this video, since I've already talked about this setup, is I wanted to talk about ways to actually improve your gameplay. And you know, I was thinking about this, and it's something that I haven't really I've talked a little bit about sort of specific weapons and how to use them, but I haven't talked too much in the past about sort of tactics or just ways in general that can help you improve as a player. And so that's what I wanted to do in this video. So I have a couple of things that I wanted to go over, and what I'm going to be talking about is probably going to be, or it'll be a little bit in the context of this round, so it might vary from map to map and stuff like that, which I'll get into a little more when I get into that part. But like I said, there are a few things that I wanted to go over, and the first thing that I wanted to talk about is somewhat related to the last video that I posted about this setup, but it's essentially that you want to be comfortable with the setup you're using. If you want to do well, and I mean, this isn't really something that I always do, because one of the things I pride myself on being able to do is to be able to have success with a variety of different weapons and a variety of different setups. So that's why, you know, you'll see competitive players very rarely will they switch up their weapons. They'll often use the exact same setup every single time they play. And you know, I'm not a competitive player. I'm not on a competitive team, even though I am in a clan that does have a competitive team. And so because of that, I, generally speaking, try to just vary the weapons that I use, partially because, you know, that's my way of showing that I think I'm a pretty good player, but also just because I find that more fun. So, you know, this isn't something that I always do, but what I did want to say about this is that if you do want to improve your gameplay, sticking to a setup for a little while, just the same setup, is actually going to be really helpful to you. It's and you know, I definitely found that was the case, because it's really rare for me to use the exact same setup in even back-to-back rounds. And I used this setup, I think, in, you know, 3 or 4 straight rounds, and I definitely noticed how much better I was doing with the setup, you know, at the 3rd or 4th round than I was in the first couple of rounds. And so it's something where you get more comfortable with the gun, with the recoil, and you know, with its advantages and disadvantages, and you know, what your capabilities are when you're using a gun. And so it can be really helpful to actually just stick to one setup, even though that's not something that you see me personally do all the time. You know, like I mentioned earlier, lots of times competitive players will just only use one setup, and that's all they'll use, because you know, they need to be able to play their best in those competitive matches. And you know, if they try out lots of different stuff, there might be, you know, decent or okay with a bunch of different setups, but they're not going to be really good with one setup. So, you know, the first step to becoming a better player or improving your gameplay is to get really good with one setup, and then from there, you know, you'll be able to apply some of that to some of the other setups that you can use. So, you know, obviously it doesn't necessarily have to be this setup that I'm using here, but just find something that you're comfortable with, that you kind of like, and you know, use it in a few rounds in a row, and you know, you'll definitely, I think you'll definitely find that over the course of time, you'll become a much better player, just because you're really comfortable with the gun that you're using and its capabilities. The second thing that I wanted to touch on is map awareness, and this is a really pretty big topic, and it varies incredibly from map to map, and a lot of it just depends on playing these maps, you know, a fair amount, and just kind of practicing and getting to know the maps. But one thing that really is helpful when you're playing is to know like the kill zones of a map, a particular map, and it also depends on game mode, I should say too. Depends on what game mode you're playing. And so in this case, I'm playing Team Deathmatch, and I was actually in a 24/7 Strike at Karkand Team Deathmatch server, which I actually found this map was a pretty good Team Deathmatch map. I thought it worked pretty well, and so that's why I kind of I stayed in it for a few rounds in a row. But you know, for at least this map, the first time through, I think I played one round before this one that you're seeing here, and I went something like 56 and 21, which, you know, obviously that's a good amount of kills. But it's also, you know, a fair amount of deaths, and I would rather see myself die less than that in one round. And you know what I was able to do after having played a round or two on this server and getting to know the map a little bit and the way it worked is I was able to figure out more where people like to go on this map and where these kill zones are, where you can often find people. And in Team Deathmatch in particular, since your objective is to get kills, it's not like you have to go for flags or go for MCOMs. In Team Deathmatch, all you have to focus on is getting those kills, because that's what's going to help your team win. And in doing that, it's important to, or it's going to be helpful to know about these kill zones, and then to base your strategy and to position yourself in a situation where you can counter where those kill zones are. Because I mean, essentially, you want to be able to predict what the enemy is going to do, and you want to be able to, you know, see what people's tendencies are, and if they go back to a certain spot, you know, often you should figure out a way, based on your knowledge of the map, you should figure out a way to counter that spot, and you know, maybe flank them or something, or get behind them, or just get an angle on them. And so what I found, and you kind of saw this throughout the beginning of this video, but what I found was really helpful on this map in particular, just for Team Deathmatch, is that when I went to that center building where the A flag would usually be, and if I just sort of kept a little bit behind cover and watched either side, depending on which side you're on, just watching the other side, I found that was you know, a pretty common spot to find people, and people were often trying to use that area. And if I head back in that direction, I can talk a little more specifically about what I was doing. But it's and the nice thing about that spot is it provides you a fair amount of cover as well. Normally, I wouldn't be too comfortable hanging out in the middle of the map, because you have to watch so many different, or people have so many different points of access to your lines of sight. And but on this map in particular, because you're kind of in that room, you're enclosed in that room in the middle there, it's the lines of sight aren't as high. You don't have as many lines of sight to worry about, and there's also more cover, so you don't have to worry about your back either. And it's a really great spot to pick people off, because you know, you'll often see people running across that road or trying to run up the left side. And I know it's kind of tough to exactly visualize what I'm saying or what I'm talking about when I'm not actually in that area, but essentially what I'm trying to say is that it's important as you move about the map to try to limit the amount of the lines of sight that the enemy has on you, and you want to take as few risks as you can manage to get yourself killed. And you know, I mean, Team Deathmatch is a little easier to predict where enemies are going to be coming from, and so that's often less of an issue. But in Conquest and in Rush, it can be a little more complicated, just to try to, you know, move about the map smart, or be careful about the way you move about the map. And a lot of that is because, you know, people will often be camping in obscure locations, whereas in Team Deathmatch, while you do get campers, it's, you know, it's often fairly clear where the enemy team is spawning from, and so it makes it a little easier to predict where they're going to be coming from. And also just because of the fact that in Team Deathmatch you don't have to worry about any objectives, so generally speaking, you can take your time a little bit more with the way that you move about the map. And I should also mention that when I'm talking about being careful in the way you move about the map, I don't mean that I think you should camp or stay in one place for a really long time. I just mean that when you do move, you should be mindful of where the enemy is, and you should think about those kill zones that I was talking about, and or those zones where, you know, people often like to go to. And so it's just something that to be careful about. You don't want to just run out in the middle of the open without really checking anywhere, or checking any spots that you think the enemy might be in. And so, you know, you see me do this a lot over the course of this round, but I don't really rush out in the open very often. I'm always checking, you know, these angles that I think the enemy might have on you, and it's just important to be careful about that, or to think about that as you're moving about the map. And I actually think it's probably better not to stay in one place for too long, and really in any game mode, or even in team deathmatch, because once you kill somebody a couple times in a row from the same spot, they're probably going to be trying to get a revenge kill on you. I mean, that's just kind of human nature. We're always trying to, whenever you get killed by somebody, the first thing you want to do is get them back. And so, the longer you stay in a position, the more you're risking the fact that the more you're giving the enemy a chance to get a kill on you, especially because they know where you are, with kill cams and stuff. And so, even if you just move slightly, or if you move to a position where you can, counter the spot that you were just in, if the enemy does try to come back into that same area, it's really going to help you out, and it's going to help you stay alive for a lot longer than if you just stay in one place for a while. Because if you camp in one building for a really long time, it's going to be fairly easy for people to get back and to kill you again, or to get a revenge kill on you. So there's not much time left in this video, but one last thing that I quickly wanted to mention is that the thing that kind of brings all this stuff that I've talked about together is your aim. And I've talked about this before, and especially if you've watched any of my sniping videos, you've probably heard me say this before, but the sensitivity that you use is actually really important. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a really high sensitivity. It's just, it has to be something that you're comfortable with, and that can really help you out in terms of aiming. And it makes things so much easier. And if you're a little bit uncomfortable with the sensitivity, if you think it's too high, it's turning it down a little bit is not such a bad thing, because it'll make you more accurate in those gunfights, and even if you might not be able to do a 360 or something. So anyways, this gameplay is just about finished. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found some of what I talked about at least a little bit helpful. And hopefully the gameplay was enjoyable to watch as well. I know it was a little longer than what I would usually post, but I kind of wanted to keep as much of the gameplay in the video as possible. So, in the future I'll try to keep my videos shorter than 10 minutes for the most part. So, anyways, thanks for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys later.